I think Libya's political future is quite interesting. I particularly think the positions that were taken by the current transitional government. And I will touch base first on my concerns and then my hopes, because I try to hope I'm a realist, so I always think concerns are a good place to start. I am somewhat, as a citizen, I am extremely disappointed in the transitional government, because I believe that as a transitional government, you are supposed to transition your country from a state of dictatorship and violence to a state of democracy and representation and communication and transparency and human rights. And I don't think that they are doing everything that they promised they would, first to their own citizens and to the international community. I believe that certain laws, such as the electoral law and the transitional justice law, having been released at 3 a.m. online in a country in which most of the population does not have regular access to internet, particularly the people who need to know about these initiatives, particularly the people who live in smaller cities. They don't have access to this. I think less than 6% is the last number given. And even those who do have access to internet may not have it frequently enough that they can be up to date on the laws that are on these laws that are released. And of course, the feedback mechanism they give of 10 days online. Whereas when they're doing something which is positive in a sense, they gave 1,500 to each family on February 17th. It was released through text message, through radio, through TV. So there's a capacity for the dissemination of information. There just doesn't seem to be a want. And that to me is extremely concerning, because I think everything else can be dealt with. Whether, financially, okay, that can be dealt with. If it's technical assistance or support, you can bring experts, you can, have round tables, etc. But the lack of transparency and communication to me is extremely worrying, particularly from a transitional government, and particularly because it's beginning to show a pattern in which I think the community as a whole is kind of being disregarded by the government, and they're doing things really behind closed doors and then announcing them, and not necessarily even announcing them, releasing them at 3 a.m. So I don't think it bodes well for the future, of politics in Libya. Speaking specifically on women, as that is my greatest concern, women are already disadvantaged politically. They do not have the financial resources to run a campaign. They don't have the social networks to be elected. For the majority, they have more societal and familial responsibilities. They don't necessarily have the educational background in democracy, and nor do they have the ability to acquire that educational background as easily as men, particularly young men, do. And there's always the cultural obstacles, which are there. They're not, and it's funny to me when people say religious. No, my parents are some of the most religious people I've ever met, and yet I'm here discussing women in politics because this is something our religion allows. It's the misuse and misinterpretation of that religion that then turns it into a taboo for a lot of women, and that cultural stigma, which was actually kind of manipulated by the Gaddafi regime. So for me, it's very interesting to see the road that women's political participation is taking. The fact that they at first received a 10% quota, which was then completely abolished, which has then turned into a zipper list in which there probably won't be that much representation from women. I think it will be quite interesting to see the road that takes, and I do think that the concerns are there. I think it's a time when Libyan women, more than anyone else, should be outraged and should be appalled and should be saying, why are we not part of the reconciliation talks? Why are we not involved in the local councils? Why are we not, part of these closed-door discussions about electoral laws and transitional justice laws and, constitutional decrees? Why are we not involved? I think it's time when they realize that this is their right. This is not something that will come to them, because in no country has women's empowerment come and been handed to them. I don't care which country you come from. It has not happened. Women have had to fight for these rights and have had to show that these belong to them. Unfortunately, that's the nature of our gender. And I think it's time for women to stand up the same way they did during the revolution and say, this is our country. We were involved in its revolution. We should be involved in the rebuilding of this country. So my greatest hope is that, first and foremost, women's political participation increases. I think that it is essential to have women on the Constitutional Drafting Committee. I think it is essential to have them in the Constitutional Assembly. I think it's essential to have them in the Parliament. And it's essential for the media, I think, to support women instead of completely ostracizing them for trying to be involved in public life. It's essential to have women as CEOs and presidents of companies, and to show young girls that these women are not only are still maintaining their responsibilities within their own societies or within their own community or their family, but they are also able to achieve the same things that a woman should be able to achieve anywhere in the world. And I don't think that we should be limiting what women can do, because we definitely never limit the men. It's never, oh, so what do the men do, you know, in their position? It's always, well, the women, they don't do that much. So I do think it's time where women step up.